Hey, Tom Bartels from GrowFoodWell.com, and thanks for joining me for video 2 of Weeds, Pests, and Living Soil, the mini workshop that shows home food gardeners how to improve their success while cutting their work in half. And if you haven't seen that video, you really should go take a look at it first. There's a button either on the right or above me here to access it. In that video, I show you how to arrange things in your garden so you only have to weed once a year. So if nothing else, go back and see that. In this second video, I'll be showing you the best organic methods to avoid pests and disease in your home food garden so that you have more time for the fun stuff. Sound good? Okay. Now you may notice that I said avoid the hassles of pests and disease instead of how to fight them. And that's because for the most part, I can avoid those issues by designing the gardens to help themselves. That doesn't mean I eradicate pests and disease, it just means keeping things in balance using natural systems. For those who don't know me, I've been growing organic food at home and at scale since 2001, and I show others how to grow food more easily wherever they live and whatever size garden they're working with. And it really can be enjoyable, with a lot less work than people think. Most of the pitfalls in gardening happen when people overlook a few key steps that weaken their plants. When plants get weak, that's an open invitation to pests and disease, and that can put you into a reactionary mode. If you feel like there are waves of pests and disease attacking your garden, that's just no fun. What I recommend is strengthening the conditions and the diversity for your plants to regain that natural balance, so you can get back to the fun parts of gardening instead of battling pests and disease. You don't need a biology degree or an entomology degree, you just have to learn a few key steps. And just watching these videos can help you understand how to naturally grow stronger plants that can fight off pests and disease on their own. So let's get into the details. If you've experienced pests or disease in your home garden, as most of us have, one of the biggest lessons to observe is how and why your plants are being attacked. Those pathogens are doing a partial service for you in showing you where the weak spots are. In general, in an organic food garden, your main job is to create conditions that allow for an uninterrupted growth cycle for your veggie plants. When you interrupt the growth cycle for any reason, rough transplanting, poor soil, irrigation, poor timing, and the wrong temperature conditions, and similar issues, you create stress in the plant. And stress reduces its ability to grow and compete for resources, and then those plants will be weaker and unable to fend for themselves. Pests and disease will most likely see that as a great opportunity and have no problem overtaking them. Pests are always attracted to plants under stress. Weak plant growth in soil that has low organic matter, for example, can attract the pests for a free lunch on plants that don't have necessary resources or natural protection in place. If they're well fed and watered consistently in soil that's rich in microorganisms, they can more easily fight off that threat of disease and pests. That concept is a great starting point when thinking about pests and disease in the garden. Now, I'm not saying you can completely eradicate pests or disease, but what we can create is a balance where your plants are so healthy that most of the time, if insects or disease come in, only a portion of your plants are affected. You can trim or ignore those affected areas and move on. When your soil has a healthy and diverse population of microorganisms and organic compost, the defenses are biologically built in. So let's look briefly at what happens below the soil. The root systems below the soil in a healthy garden are surrounded with microorganisms in a symbiotic relationship that creates strength and balance. Using synthetic chemicals, fertilizers, and pesticides shuts down that system. So use organic compost, and I'll explain that in the next video. You probably already understand the weakness in monocropping, like the methods used in industrial agriculture. It exposes all the plants to higher risks, so the farmer uses increasing amounts of chemicals to protect their crops. A better and more stable method in organic gardens comes down to plant diversity. By planting a diverse range of plant types together, you create strength through diversity. The mix of shapes and scents, patterns and colors can throw off many of the insects that are looking for an easy meal. And the plants have natural chemical means of fighting things off if given the chance. So, you want to create the strongest, healthiest conditions for biodiversity to flourish in your garden. That includes attracting as many diverse birds and insects and lizards or whatever local species you have around. Most of the insects you see in a healthy garden are beneficial, and when allowed to flourish, they will keep the problem insect populations down for you. All of the plants listed here can help attract beneficial insects and pollinators and help repel the pests. Plant them everywhere around the garden. Plant as many varieties of annuals and perennials of different colors, seasons, and types as possible. You can even help reduce disease by how you water the garden. By using drip irrigation, you reduce waterborne diseases by limiting the water splash from overhead watering. It also helps to trim the low leaves along the soil level to help airflow, especially on tomatoes. Many insects and plant diseases have favorite target plants that they'll hit year after year if given the chance. They'll create all kinds of sneaky ways to lay eggs or create conditions to help them repopulate and attack those same plants the following year if they can. So your job is to make sure they don't get the opportunity. The easiest way to do this is to rotate your crops. This means you avoid planting vegetables from the same families in the same beds each year. This method helps break the life cycle of the pest that attacks those plants. This is why I recommend drawing up an annual planting diagram of which plants ended up in which beds each season, so you can see where the rotations are necessary. Healthy plants can sometimes outlast the insect attack. Last year I had some flea beetles on my pak choi. They were eating holes in the leaves, and they persisted until we got later into the season. And they have a season too. 1 week there were fewer, and then they had all gone. The temperatures had made them move on or go dormant. I simply stripped off the outer damaged leaves, and the plants kept growing undisturbed until I harvested them in the fall. The plants were so healthy, they simply outlasted the insect attack and kept growing. Once you get a healthier garden with stronger plants, you can sidestep that cycle of reaction to being attacked. You may still have some insects come in, but it's more episodic and easier to take care of. Here are a few examples of how to quickly respond to smaller problems. Aphids can be a hassle on many plants, and the easiest way to handle them is just spray them off with a strong stream of water. Be careful about getting rid of all beetles. Many ground beetles can be very beneficial since they're meat eaters and they hunt caterpillars and other plant eaters. Earwigs can be lured into a rolled up wet newspaper at night and then discarded in the morning. Tomato hornworms can be traced to the tomato plants where the recent damage took place and simply pulled off by hand. During the transition to a stronger garden, you may need a hand keeping pests at bay. And one of the common methods to reduce some of those pests in an organic garden is using diatomaceous earth that can help for soft-bodied insects. And you can use physical barriers like hoop house netting that can protect plants without harming the soil. One exercise that's good to learn is when insects seem to take over any part of the garden, you might first step back and consider some of the following. What are you seeing? Start asking yourself these questions. Why is that pest or disease attacking your garden? Is the plant getting enough nutrients from the soil? Did you use enough organic compost? Is your soil pH too high or too low to consider growing that plant in that location? Did the plant get transplanted correctly and on time? Are the plants getting enough water and sun? Are weeds encroaching on the plants? Is it possible you purchased weak plants from a big box store and brought the problem into your garden with them? Did you bring some amendment in from off-site that may have been harboring insects, disease, or chemical carryover? Have you been rotating your crops? Or are you growing the same thing in the same place year after year? There are as many questions as there are situations, but one of the most effective and consistent answers is to just keep creating living, healthy soil by using organic compost and worms. Once you build a robust community of diverse microorganisms in your soil, you'll see a major shift towards balance. Many of your pest problems go away because of the magic that can happen below the surface in what's called the soil food web and how it can protect your plants throughout the season. Compost is very key to that process. I'll be showing you how to easily create those conditions in the next video, and we'll talk about the secret sauce that runs the whole underground system in veggie gardens and has been there all along for about 3 billion years. It's truly fascinating. Thanks for joining me. That's it for now.